Friends. Operational situation at the front on the 28th of April. On this broadcast, we will talk with you in more detail about the Kapysko-Svitovsky section of the front, briefly about the Chazarsky, and of course in detail about the Kurakhovsky and Pokrovsky directions. We will start with Kupiansk-Svidovsky section of the Kislovka front, where active hostilities continue, and the enemy has partial success along several streets. So the first one he managed to advance to a depth of about 200 meters along the street, so to the central part of Kislovka, to the intersection, and in general on a section up to 1 kilometer wide. The onslaught from the enemy continues not only on the central part of Kislovka, but also Kotlyrovka. Kotlyrovka means, as we see the vectors, so there is also a southerly direction. And it is natural that now, against the background of the fact that there is activity a little to the south of Kotlyrovka, respectively, there is pressure to strike from two directions. So far, if we speak for Kotlyrovka, here only on the northern outskirts, we have an enemy approaching. And as for Kislovka, the situation here is a little more complicated. Active hostilities continue, but there are also counterattacks from the AFU, according to the available reports that there are. In general, active hostilities. These are the ones that are unfolding in this sector of the front. It should be noted that although at the first stages there were reports of quite serious pressure from the Russian troops, nevertheless, despite all the difficulties, yes, the APU was not allowed to make a deep breakthrough as it was planned, yes, because more than 10 armored vehicles were involved, as you remember, for the assault. And they started like this the so-called rifle melee battles, an urban type of combat in these villages. Therefore, the fighting continues. It is clear that now the Russian troops are using their superiority of personnel and tactical aviation in order to succeed. Well, we can't say that the main focus is exclusively Kislovka, because vector is starting to change a little bit. Well, I repeat, attempts are also being made in the Tebayevka area to move in the north direction now. Maybe it's not Kotlyrovka, maybe it will be Kislovka, but time will tell. In any case, there are attempts to advance. A fairly active site. We are moving with you to the Chasover direction. According to him, we do not record any significant changes, and in general, so far this section of the front is beginning to resemble the Limansky, where the eastern Turnov, in the eastern Yampilovka. We have had positional fighting exclusively for the last 2 weeks. Well, here, despite the transfer of forces to Bakhmut, yes, despite the transfer of forces to the same Bogdanovka, positionality is absolutely observed. And we turn to the Pokrovsky direction, where we have the main changes. We will start with you with Novokalinov. There was a lot of misinformation yesterday, which I talked about in the evening broadcast, and there is a lot of information. So on Kislovka I forgot the changes. Yes, the situation was yesterday, the situation is today. Now for Novokalinov. So yesterday there were reports that they allegedly managed to enter the ceramics, allegedly take ceramics, Novokalinov and so on. This was not true. There is pressure if we speak for Novokaliny along Stavkova Street in the north direction, and along Molodezhnaya Street just the same in the west, and on the outskirts of Karamika. As for the western part of Novokalinov, we have briefly said that they are trying to push on this sector of the front, that is, in order to attack Novokalinov with a wide coverage. And at the same time, there are a number of attacks that we have coming from the south of the southern Kalinov in the north direction. Therefore, both the gray zone and the red zone refinement have been added here. The situation looks like this. A small red zone, but in any case, now the Russian troops, having already received more stable flanking positions of Novobakhmutovka-Solovyev, they can naturally afford to add attacks in the ledge, realizing that the flank will not be cut off. Therefore, there are attempts to break through to the southern part and the western part of Novokalinov. And along Sadovaya Street, there are also active hostilities. In this area, the situation is currently being clarified, because there is no visual data, there is no official information. As for the rating, in fact, according to the footage that was published from drones, it means that Russian troops are present in our buildings in this area, and they are carrying out assault operations in the north and east direction. There are about 15 houses left here, I mean several high-rise buildings, and the main one is the private sector. Up to 15 houses, even up to 10 houses. And in fact, yes, there will be a settlement of the next one captured. So they keep pushing. Naturally, the next point a little to the north of the queue there are dachas. And there will definitely be attempts to break through to them from the Russian troops. Therefore, active hostilities are now taking place in our northern part, on the northern outskirts. Even I would say the northern outskirts of Osheretyn, in order to prevent what they are trying to implement. Still, if we proceed from the attack vector, the forces involved, and the messages that are there, they will still try to go to Arkhangelsk, and there they will already try to go north of Novokalinov. Or they will be able to break through further, well, and in general close this area. But this is what they initially plan, we can say so, yes. We will see how it will be implemented, because the vector is very different, and it changes regularly. As for the section between Solovyev and Semenovka-Solovyev-Berdik, some clarifications have been added here to yesterday. So, yesterday, as you remember, the enemy managed to capture the settlement of Berdik, and today a clarification has been added. Along to forest belts, they also managed to gain a foothold. So we assumed that they would be Semenovki, as I initially voiced the day before yesterday on the broadcast. So Semenovki will go here just the same in the south direction, along the forest belt, well, and they will try to connect. It means that it went from a slightly different angle, but they still went in this area to attack, not exactly as I said, but still. The situation for yesterday, the situation for today. Here, in a section up to 1 kilometer wide, we have advanced to a depth of 470 meters. Well, actually there are attempts to strike in the south direction, but now they are leveling along the Berdiks, along the beam that is formed. That is, the main focus, well, conditionally we will draw such an oval for now. They are betting to gain a foothold. Yes, from Semenovka itself along the beam, there are still 2 small forest belts, which will naturally protect against a flank attack. Also, a bet will be placed on them in the near future, based on where they are attacking now. The greater emphasis, of course, is now on the northern flank. It will be Arkhangelsk Ceramics, Novokalinova, even a queue, and go to Arkhangelsk. So this is the ledge. Well, then we will look at the fact. Therefore, active hostilities continue here. As for the plot, I'm thin with a turnaround without any changes. As for the May Day, so far the positional nature of the fighting. It was relatively possible to stabilize the situation during attacks in the direction of the Damak beam. Although, again, Russian troops are making attempts to put pressure in the southern direction, and with a wide coverage, but today, we state the situation without any changes. And of course, the Kurakov direction, Krasnogorovka. So there were regular attacks in Krasnogorovka itself, with the support of armored vehicles from the Russian side. What are they doing now? They are doing what we have already commented on the previous days, that the main pressure is along Zheleznodorozhnaya Street. And they continue to press. I would even say they are now partially successful at the T-shaped intersection. In general, a number of other points are being clarified. We need visual data, I think they will be by tonight. Well, about this area we have in red. At the same time, what we have along Geologicheskaya Street is not entirely clear. In other words, they managed to repel the attack. Yes, we talked with you, but they did not retreat to their original positions. Here approximately this area also remains on refinement. But at the same time they go, again, this information would be more relevant in the morning, yes, because then it turned down. Again, there are active assault actions on the part of the Russian troops. Therefore, it is difficult to say objectively what is happening now. That is, we had 2 areas for clarification in the morning, and accordingly, after that, again, new assault actions are being taken. At the same time, they are taking just the same along Geologicheskaya Street, along Zheleznodorozhnaya Street, so it's hard to say. There is pressure along Vachutin Street as well, so far it is minimal for them. I would say more, they are just aimed at cutting off the Solnikny microdistrict in the northern direction by striking or closing it. But this will show all the time. Well, and then try to go to the Krasnogorovsky plant with great strength. It will show all the time. As for Georgiivka, there are also active hostilities here. For the most part, the southeastern part of Georgiivka, that is, south of Georgievsky Stavka, is also aimed at Centralnaya Street. At several intersections here, taking into account Molodezhnaya Street, about this area. And at the same time, they are making further attempts to advance along the fields, along the forest belt in a northerly direction, in order to enter the very two forest belts that we talked about, leading just the same to the central part of Georgiivka. A very big bet is being made on this, which will give them, although they have already approached the intersection of Molodezhnaya Centralnaya, but still increase pressure on this part and continue the attacks with a wider coverage. Although today, taking into account what forces are used in Krasnogorovka, where and how the movement takes place, I would still say that now Georgiivka is more of a distraction from Krasnogorskovka, because they focus mainly on Krasnorovka. But time will show everything here, as I say, because there are a number of points, and it is quite difficult for Russian troops to move here, given that these areas are very important, especially Krasnogorovka and Krasnogorovka itself, yes. And of course, there is a lot of activity on the part of the APU right now with F-drones, well, and barrel rocket artillery. Plus, footage of the transfer of armored vehicles to the border with Ukraine is already being published little by little on the network. Various messages are being sent, well, including ammunition. Therefore, it is naturally expected that the HIMARS Müllers will receive ammunition. This will allow the situation to be relatively stabilized in a number of areas, although it is necessary to comment. Now I'm going to finish this already. Let's go to the front. There are a lot of very articles about what will happen in general. So, in Novomikhailovka, we have been avoiding it minimally for 2 days with you. The fact is that there are attempts here. We briefly spoke with you for the Garden Association machine builder of northern Novomikhailovka, but in general, there is activity from Victory to Vladimirovka, but it ends with absolute positivity. Here it is possible to repel absolutely all attacks now. That is, just the same, the strengthening of tactical air strikes on the Pokrovsky direction and on Krasnogorovka, and the reduction of strikes, naturally by aerial bombs, on the area of the South Donetsk section of the Novomikhailovka front, south-north of it, yes, shows immediately that positionality is coming. Attempts there are reports from both sides, not only from our side, from the Russian side, there are also reports that they continue the assault actions of the Garden Association Mashinostroidal. There is a lot about trying to push from the Sweet and close the ledge, and well, the attacks continue. But so far we have not recorded any results in this sector of the front. There again, if there is enough frontline air defense, which will reduce the activity of Russian tactical aviation, yes, the situation will be achieved at parity. But again, the enemy has drones, a few modifications, yes, which it all detects. So it's a complicated story so far. It's a complicated story, but in any case, we see that with a decrease in the activity of tactical aviation, stabilization is immediately achieved very quickly, even relatively in difficult areas of the front. I will comment on the harvest without changes and on the Rabatinsky ledge, because another footage has been published. All the same, from Verbov, they are betting more on moving in the northwestern direction, although before there was more at work on and in the work on itself. Now again, they are trying to distort the forces of the armed forces of Ukraine in this sector of the front. But we do not record any changes. To date, everything remains within the red and gray zone.